Howdy folks, this is Big Sam. Today we're going to be unwrapping a very special Mosin. This has got to be the most special Mosin that we've ever featured on the channel, and if we were able to one-up this, well, I would be surprised, folks. Lurking beneath this unsightly trash bag and masking tape lies something pretty special. So let's go ahead and see what's inside here, folks, because the suspense really is just killing me. So let's see what we've got here. Oh boy, what is that? Oh, that's the bolt. Look at that. Wow, I think that's sheet metal. A bolt made out of sheet metal. Oh, that's the grip. Oh, wow. Look at this, folks. That's amazing. This is a Mosin model 9130 produced by the Ajev's factory in 1942. Although I don't suspect that it looked quite like this during the Great Patriotic War. In fact, there's just quite a lot going on here. So I think what we need to do is get this outside in a little bit better light, and we could get a bit of a closer look at and figure out what exactly this is. Because this really does look like a mix of Star Wars and Daffy Duck. So let's get to it, folks. Alrighty, folks, that's a little bit more like it. See, it already looks better out here in the daylight. Now, the first thing you'll notice is I did swap out the bolt handle. I just had to see what this would look like with the Hurst shifter. And folks, I really think it complements the grip frame structure as well as that brilliant muzzle brake up there. Really just completes the gun. So, first of all, what is this? Well, like I said before, this is actually a Mosin Nagant 9130 rifle produced by the Ajev's factory in 1942. We'll look at the barrel markings here in a little bit. But this has been converted to a Bullpup using, I believe it's the CBRPS chassis. And I'll put a link down to their website. I believe that's what they're called, but you can check them out in their website. I'll put the link in the description below, because they do a lot of cool stuff. They make Bullpups for not just Mosins, but also SKSs, AKs, I think even Ruger 1022s. Really, this is a great way to go if you just want something a little bit different, folks. Let's face it, when you go to the gun range, a lot of times there's always 2 or 3 people that have the same gun as you. If you get one of these, the chances are probably not. And let's face it, if there are, there's going to be some great conversation and probably a new friend had. At any rate, though, some of y'all also might be wondering, straight off the way, is this a short-barreled rifle? Is this an NFA item? Of course, that would imply that the barrel length is shorter than 16 inches here in America. And the answer is, of course, no. No one in their right mind would short-barreled rifle a Bullpup Mosin. Probably, and I certainly did not. This one actually still has roughly at least a 20-inch barrel. It just looks a lot shorter because it's a Bullpup. But the barrel, we can get in a little bit closer here. The barrel actually starts right here. And there's our markings. We'll look at that in a second. So it actually still has a really long barrel. It goes all the way to right here. I believe this one's threaded on here. And about this muzzle brake. So this muzzle brake, someone actually, I'm not going to disclose any names to protect the innocent, but someone actually had this custom machined at a machine shop for roughly $500 is apparently the story. Which is really cool. If you swing around here to the front, I don't want to get in front of the muzzle, but if you look here at the muzzle, you can see, yeah, that's got a wicked tip on it. You could really breach a door with this rascal. Not good. So this is quite unique, and I really do like the way this looks. This is the company's logo right here, and you can also see it over here, and it's kind of neat that you can see through that. So let's go over some of the features, or some of the lack thereof, of this rifle. Well, first of all, on this particular chassis, there's this section of Picatinny rail here at the very bottom. So of course we had to mount an airsoft bipod to it here. Nothing but the best for this gun. So we can see we got our airsoft bipod mounted on here. Pretty simple. You'll have to let me know if you think this gun deserves something nicer like a Magpul bipod, which we put on that KPYK. I don't know about that. I think it's okay the way it is for now. Another really cool feature is this vertical grip here. This guy actually flips up and down, so I can show you that here. It's just tension, so he flips up like that, and then I can just pull him a little tight, but I can just lock him down like that. And I'll fold it back up so you can see what it looks like folded here. All right. Now, here's what's funny is, for those of y'all who know a lot about bullpups, and let's face it, most of y'all probably do because I don't know all that much about bullpups, but one thing I've always heard about the bullpup design is that if you make turn a gun into a bullpup, the problem is you have to have a separate trigger that's connected to this long like bar to the actual trigger, because the actual trigger of the Mosin is back here. That's not the real trigger. So what happens a lot of times is if you turn a gun into a bullpup, the trigger gets pretty bad. Ironically, let's face it, this kind of makes sense though, because this is a Mosin, and Mosins are just messed up and break all the rules. This might be the only bullpup chassis in the world where it actually made the trigger of the gun better. Go figure. Maybe something to do with leverage. I'm not really sure, but in general, they get worse. This one's not bad. I can show it to you here. And also, this is good because I can show you how to access this whole thing. So some of y'all might be wondering, how does this gun work? Okay, so we have our bolt back here, and then there's actually just this latch. And this guy, there's no spring, there's no catch. He just flips up and down like that. In the breeze, he just flips around like that. All right, so if we flip him up, we can see, for instance, our barrel markings. Remember I said this was produced by the Ijev's factory in 1942. Some cool markings on here. There's our Ijev's factory triangle right there. And there's our crest of the USSR. You'll also notice here while we're here, there's no rear sight base. I believe for this guy, the rear sight base has to go, so that's why you see the base is gone and there's like a cross pin there. But if you look down here, you can actually see the trigger bar mechanism thing. So first of all, we're gonna open up the Hurst shifter here and make sure our gun is clear. I'll do a visual check. We are clear. I did check it. So I'm going to go ahead and close it here. And the rifle's pointed in a safe direction, so that's always important too. But I can show you the trigger. This is actually just a trigger bar. It's really kind of ghetto. You can actually see it just kind of moves around here. But I'll show you the trigger. It's not the worst thing in the world. Yeah. That's not that bad, folks. That's actually a very nice trigger. That's actually kind of disturbing. But going back here, you might notice these two holes. Yeah, so this gun actually started off life before the Bullpup chassis. Someone had already drilled a 9130 for a scope mount, so the rifle was already, some people would say ruined. I wouldn't use that language, but you know what I mean. From a collectability standpoint, yeah, it's sort of it was degraded already because someone had drilled and tapped the receiver for a scope, and that's a really good rifle. If you want a project like this, you really want to first find a good donor rifle, and a rifle like this is actually a great donor rifle. If you get a donor rifle that someone had already tampered with, so to speak, you don't feel guilty about making something that looks this crazy. You don't feel as guilty, at least. Okay, and if I lift this guy up here, you can see there's our original Mosin Nagant magazine, and we've got our latch down here. So which, of course, y'all know the trigger is actually right here. It's still here. That's the real trigger. There's just this bar thing that's going all the way over here, connecting it to this trigger. That's it. It's actually really simple. And you can still see that. Let me see if I can Oh, it's kind of hard to see, but there's still the same action screw underneath the back of the bolt here, securing the whole gun to this thing. Now you also notice here at the top there's something that looks sort of like a carry handle kind of a thing. It's not detachable, it's part of this particular setup, but it just sort of comes up. There's a hump, but you can use it to carry the rifle, which is kind of handy, assuming you don't have some sort of scope on here. And in this case, we don't have a scope or really anything. We just have this flip up like vism for like an airsoft gun, which will probably disintegrate as soon as we try to shoot this. But it actually works, which is kind of cool. And of course, over here we do have more Picatinny rail, where you could mount some kind of, potentially an IR laser if you wanted to use a night vision with this setup. Might be really neat to go hog hunting with this one day. We can go ahead and close the bolt. So how does it work with the action, you might ask? Well, it's kind of weird. So you've got this whole dust cover, if you want to call it that. When you fire around and you cycle the action, open up the bolt, it just opens the dust cover, right? And then you cycle and put it back, and then usually if your cheeks here, it'll just sort of fall down automatically. It's not the most sophisticated design in the world, but it does work. I can show you the latches over here. See, it's just got a couple latches. All right, and one other really neat thing that I will show y'all is this is sort of like a shotgun in that it's actually spring-loaded. This has a spring-loaded stock to help absorb some of the recoil. And I'll have to demonstrate that when we actually shoot this. I don't know if, yeah, you can see the spring in there. All right, now here's a fun tip. Some of y'all may not realize this, but this is not the first Mosin that was spring-loaded. In fact, the first Mosin that had a spring-loaded stock was, in fact, the 1907 carbine. Right before World War I, they were doing a trials gun. There was a 1907 carbine, because it's a small gun, had a lot of recoil. They tested this mechanism that went on the back of the stock that was spring-loaded to help absorb some of the recoil, and that was right before the Great War started. And as soon as the Russian Empire mobilized, that project kind of went out the window, as you could imagine. But neat fact, this is not unique to this Mosin. All right, so we've talked a lot about this Mosin. Enough talk, though. How does she shoot? Let's find out. Alrighty, so we're out at the range here with Liz Cheney, and let's face it, that was really the only appropriate name for this abomination. So Liz Cheney, welcome to the Mosin Museum. We're going to go ahead and load up Liz Cheney here with 5 rounds of some Red Army Standard 7.62 by 54 rimmed, 148 grain full metal jacket. Pretty standard stuff here. And one of the nice things about this design is the latch will hit the bolt handle, so it won't close on you when you're actually trying to load your firearm, at least fully, which is kind of important. Alrighty. It's really not too bad to load, you know. Could you use stripper clips with this setup? I think you could. It'd be kind of tight with this latch, but I think you could. Well, maybe we'll have to try that in the next video we make on this gun, is trying to load up Liz Cheney with some stripper clips. Alrighty. We got 5 rounds here. So I already headspace checked this, and let's face it, when you're dealing with something as a big of an abomination as this, you really want to make sure safety comes first. So get that guy in there. All right, and here we go. Now, some of y'all may have noticed that we swapped out the bipod. Flat dark earth is my color, and I just had to have something flat dark earth on there, so that's why we've got that. All right. Fire in the hole. Let's see how well this muzzle brake and the spring-loaded stock works. This is a weird gun, folks. Ho, mama! I think I've already encountered one problem, which is the trigger stop doesn't always work as intended, and you can inadvertently pull the bolt out when you're cycling it. Not really the greatest thing in the world, but thankfully we're not in a combat scenario and we're in a controlled environment here. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw my bolt back in, and we'll send another round. Now, what's the recoil like on this gun? It's really not bad. The stock really absorbs a lot of the recoil, but also this muzzle brake, let's send one more here, it's very effective. It honestly feels like it kicks a little bit more than, you know, your standard AR-15 or whatnot, but, you know, maybe a little bit less than something like a 6.5 Carcano. It's actually pretty soft shooting. We'll have to get this on a scale, but this gun actually weighs a lot, especially with the Hirsch shifter. You really wouldn't want to have to lug this thing around in the backcountry with you, or, you know, say across the Urals fighting the Nazis. Just really not ideal from a weight standpoint, but it is pretty nice because of its length. So it really doesn't shoot that bad, folks. In another video, we'll have to get a real optic on here and actually do some accuracy testing. But just for kicks, because I wanted to see how she shoots, really not that bad. We just gotta get that trigger stop fixed. Looks like I got one more round, so let's make the most of it here. All right, fire in the hole. Let's see if I can hold it with the other vertical foregrip. One of the nice things about this setup is you have options, right? Sometimes it's difficult choosing which vertical foregrip you want to use. Right now I'm in the mood for flat dark earth. Oh, mom. Well, the Vism sight didn't explode. It's actually still working, which is amazing. But I think a lot of that's due to the recoil mitigation you get from the muzzle brake and the stock. Really nice overall. Well, not bad. The only real disappointing thing is that trigger stop. And, well, we'll have to tinker around with that a little bit more. But overall, pretty fun to shoot, folks. Alrighty, so what have we learned here, folks? Well, for one thing, the recoil on this gun was way less than what I was expecting. Even with that big muzzle brake. Very soft shooting gun. If you like Mosins but don't like the recoil, maybe this is for you. One of my other thoughts about that issue with the trigger stop not fully engaging and being able to freely pull the bolt out when I was trying to cycle the action might have been actually because something was going on with the trigger mechanism itself. What I'm wondering is after I pulled the trigger and then let it back, maybe it didn't quite disengage fully, and it was still sort of getting depressed because of this whole trigger bar mechanism from the Bullpup chassis, and that's what was causing the trigger stop to not fully engage. My guess, I'm going to have to play around with this a little bit more to see if that's actually what's causing it. If it is, you just sort of have to remember to make sure it's all the way forward when you want to cycle the action, essentially. Other thing is, when you go and actually shoot this, you have to tighten all of these screws here. And a lot of this chassis is polymer. Like, this is polymer, and it's a little, well, dubious at best. So I'm very dubious about the return to zero properties after shooting, you know, hundreds of rounds through this system. Might be something we have to test. I know this is an older design from their Bullpup systems. I don't think you can get this one anymore, so maybe some of their newer stuff is different, but if you see here, like, I think Oh, I think this might be polymer. You can see there's different layers in here, but there's screws on both sides, and I did have to tighten these before I went out and shot. I noticed these were loose. So these are going to come loose if you shoot these things regularly, and you are going to have to periodically come in and tighten these. How that's going to impact your zeroing on any optic you decide to mount on here, I don't know. However, this is still nicer than pretty much any other stock/chassis on the market, simply because you don't have to drill and tap the receiver in order to mount an optic on it. This chassis does give you the option to mount an optic, even if it's not really the greatest thing in the world. Oh, and ironically, though, I say that, remember, someone had already drilled and tapped this one, but we don't have a scope mounted using that system. Okay, so overall, there's a lot of things that are kind of appealing about this whole system. However, everything about this chassis just has sort of bad idea written all over it, which is why I love it so much. There's really nothing good about this whole setup. And of course, I just like really weird and quirky things, and maybe that's why I like Mosins. Maybe that's why I'm still single, and maybe that's why I like this thing so much, because it's just, there's no purpose for this thing. There's really no reason why this should exist. There's no reason why anyone would build this, and yet it exists. And so in some ways, this is kind of the Napoleon Dynamite of Mosins. And you know what? I'm okay with that. But you know what? I think a few other folks that watch this channel might have some experience with these Bullpup systems. And so, since I am very new to this and just had a few rounds, maybe there's some more long-term owners out there. If that's you, make sure to leave your thoughts on these down in the comments below. And of course, y'all know that eventually this is going to make it on the website as well, because people need to be able to see this, especially with this really neat Hurst shifter. So, really interesting gun. Do I recommend going out and buying one of these? Probably not. I think these are kind of expensive. I think these chassis are, several hundreds of dollars. I'm not exactly quite sure. You'll have to go on their website, which I will provide a link down below. But really, I'm just thankful they make these, because they're not practical in a sense. They're just kind of atrocious. And yet, I'm drawn to this so much. Like, I can't even describe necessarily why. There's just something about it that makes me love this gun, even though it's so horrible. So I hope you guys really enjoyed the video and getting a chance to take a look at this neat gun. If you got any questions, make sure to post them down in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe if you like more Mosin Nagant content like this and you want to see this gun in future videos. Let me know if you guys have any prayer requests, and we'll see you next time.